Death is everywhere and happens to every single one of us, save for a select few chosen ones. But death is especially more common in video games, where you can be sitting there having 0 kills and 25 deaths in your favourite Call of Duty game, or visiting Bed of Chaos for the 100th time trying to avoid its tender and sweet sweep of love that directs you straight into that godforsaken pit. I'm Chemical Packer, a Celeste speedrunner and dreadful self-imposed challenge runner. I want to spend some time talking about just how cool it is to beat a game without dying, so sit back, crack open a cold can of Pepsi Max, because this will be some rambling. Games expect you to die, sometimes only a single time as a means to inflict an emotional scar upon you, or as a means of highlighting to the player a mistake that they're making, and then giving them helpful tips on the loading screen, while they wait to get their ass handed to them again by Deathstroke in Arkham Origins. Ultimately, it could just be because that third-party controller you purchased has some mean stick drift on it, and while you went off to do another round of gamer fuel, you left the game on pause, which caused your character to move very slowly towards that bottomless pit of death, doom, and pain. Deathless challenge runs are not particularly common on Twitch and other live streaming services, often being outshined by speedruns instead, for many reasons. One of which is that the biggest downfall of death runs, which is also its strength, is that it has a tangible end goal, which is to, not die.
Now what?
Once the run has been conquered, the challenge is over. Although harder layers of difficulty can be added upon a lot of deathless runs by adding certain restraints like using a specific weapon or not leveling up a character throughout the entire run. And this is sort of where speedruns become more popular because they're constantly evolving, with new tricks, skips and glitches being discovered on top of the fascination of watching runners beat these games extremely quickly has brought in many new potential people to try and bring those times down even more and seek out that world record. Beating a game without dying is often an unintended byproduct of speedrunning. Players typically want to die as few times as possible in order to get as fast a time as they can. Of course, some glitches do require player deaths, which stop them from being deathless runs. This could include Bubba's world record any % run of Celeste, which features 5 deaths, one of which is intentional due to a certain skip named Bub's Drop, which requires the player to die and respawn in a different location, which skips a large area of the level. But then there's speedruns of the cyberpunk parkour game Ghost Runner, such as Warharisto's any % inbounds run, which features some incredibly fast and smooth movement along with a grand total of 0 deaths. Beating a game without dying is an intense spectacle. The stakes can feel so incredibly high when the runner is nearing the end of a game or entering into a notoriously difficult section. The runner and viewers alike will feel the intensity of the unknown, hoping that maybe this time they'll succeed beyond this point and get to move on to a new segment, or that they'll finally be witness to seeing the run being beaten without dying a single time and partaking in all the hype surrounding it. But getting to witness or making those failures is all part of the joy of these runs. Like watching the heartbreak of me getting into Golden Ridge and Celeste, only to be smacked right in the chest with a snowball out of nowhere is a pain felt by myself and my community alike. But this pain has been felt elsewhere in other communities. Like in Specs and Stats' Breath of the Wild 100% damageless run attempt, where they expected to teleport to the final shrine only to accidentally hit the pause screen and receive a big fuck you hit in the back from a Storkoblin 39 hours into the run. Sometimes it's not mistakes that kill the run, and instead it's the player opting to make the mistake of running a buggy and glitchy game. Jarbo attempted a Fallout 4 survival deathless run and was met with an unfortunate death. See, Fallout 4 has a glitch where running into a car will kill the player. This is a result of the car having a mass so they can move around and get flown about in the air when they're blown up. When Jarbo ran directly into a car during the attempt, it counted as the car hitting the player instead and inflicted a whack ton of damage, killing Jarbo and the run instantly. In order for a deathless challenge run to garner attention, it requires an audience to recognize how difficult it is to beat whatever the game the player is attempting without dying. And this is why deathless runs are extremely popular in the Soulsborne Akira community. These runs are actually referred to as no-hit runs instead, which is a considerably more impressive feat, seeing as taking even one hit can fail a run. These runs can sort of be held within the deathless category due to the rules of the runs stating that even a death to the environment, such as a fatal fall, is marked as a hit. This requires the player to beat the game both without dying and without being hit to beat the run. Dark Souls is renowned for its incredible difficulty, and to even beat any of the games once is an achievement in and of itself, let alone beating it without dying or taking a hit from an enemy. So watching these challenges being undertaken by streamers is incredible fun to watch, be it the Happy Hob, who popularized these runs, pretending to sneak around Anor Londo in Dark Souls 3, or Charlie Bitme showing off the incredible prowess of navigating through the pitch black tomb of the giants with ease, or the perfect parrying and dodging of that giant of a boss that is the big, dumb, stupid ape. Even these no-hit runs have seen some challenge modifiers put on them, with runners attempting a Soul Level 1 build, which involves them not leveling up their character a single time, or even trying to beat every single boss instead of avoiding the optional ones. Another deeper subcategory of deathless runs was Small Out One's 138-hour long battle to beat Pokemon Platinum without taking a single hit of damage. Technically. Smallant did reset back to the previous gym instead of from the very beginning of the game, as to reset after each hit would become a slog to watch. After 69 plus 1 resets, Smallant got through the entire game without taking a hit, and consequently without dying. Pokemon fainting here would be considered a death in this type of run. And sure, Smallant's attempt was impressive, but then Game Champ 3000 comes along in 2019 with an insane 222-hour damageless run of Pokemon Blue, somehow managing to avoid any instances of physical damage, poisoning, or confusion. Instead, they relied on some intense grinding against wild Metapods, which do not have an attack move, and then having to wait around for their Pokemon to level up at the daycare. This run was significantly different to Smallant's run, as if he were to take a hit, Game Champ would delete the entire save and restart the run. Deathless runs do exist and are quite popular among Pokemon fans. Instead, they are typically called Nuzlocke runs and have two very simple rules. The first is that any Pokemon that faints is considered to be dead and has to be released or stored in the PC instead of being revived by Nurse Joy. It cannot be used again in the run. The second rule requires the player to catch the first wild Pokemon that they encounter in each area. If that Pokemon faints or flees, then the player cannot catch another. Well, this technically means that it's not a true deathless run, as one or more Pokemon can die and the run will still continue. If players seeking even more difficulty in this challenge can make it so that even if a single Pokemon in their roster dies, then the run is considered dead. Hell, they could even try a Nuzlocke run with a single Pokemon instead to really up the ante. And you see some of these challenges require a lot of grind, BB, but that isn't to say that these kinds of runs are just for the hardcore gamers, or those willing to grind the game over and over again. From a more casual perspective, some games actually reward the player for beating them without dying a single time. If someone beats Dark Souls 2 for instance without taking on a single death, they are given the illusory Ring of the Conqueror, which makes the weapon in the player's left hand invisible. An additional cutscene is shown after the credits in The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening if the player beats it without dying. The final cutscene shows a winged Marin flying across the screen in the sky, while in the DX version of the game, her image instead appears and slowly fades away. Achievement hunters will need to beat some games without dying a single time in order to 100% their games. The Immortal achievement in Ori and the Blind Forest rewards the player with a whopping 25 gamer score for beating the game without dying a single time. By achieving an S rank in 4 time trials in the incredibly difficult platformer V or V6, an additional game mode called, funnily enough, No Death Mode, is unlocked, requiring the player to complete the game without dying a single time. It even goes as far as to edit a level slightly so it doesn't require an intentional death. Completing this ridiculous challenge awards the player with a fancy schmancy achievement to boast about. To cotton on to this, V6 isn't the only game to feature a no death mode. Both Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal feature an unlockable level of difficulty called Ultra Nightmare, which is pretty similar to their game's highest level of difficulty named Nightmare, with one exception. There's permadeath. Dying means you get to see that save file deleted and you have to start the run all over again. But that's not all, wait for this. Doom and gloom. If you manage to succeed through the levels and reach the point where you died in the previous run, there's a little gravestone marking the point of death. A very notable deathless category is the hardcore mode featured in Minecraft. The player has only a single life, and should they lose it, for whatever reason, they can no longer play in the world. Instead, they can spectate their world and look over as they watch their villager wife trade emeralds with the villager blacksmith for favors. The hardcore mode is also extremely popular on YouTube, popularized by Luke the Notable, where he tries to spend 100 in-game days in a Minecraft world without dying. These are immensely popular videos, and he has since taken on other much longer challenges, with him trying to survive 1,000 and 2,000 days in Minecraft, along with playing on a super flat mode variant. Celeste doesn't grant an achievement, but upon completion of the main game and its B-sides, the player unlocks the ability to collect golden strawberries. In order to collect a golden strawberry, the player is required to pick up the berry at the very start of the level and bring it through the entire chapter without dying a single time, or else they get bubbled all the way back to the very start of the level. Collecting a golden strawberry changes the level select card to a nice golden color, and collecting all of the golden berries in the main game, B-sides and C-sides turns the save file postcard golden as well. Coincidentally, these golden berries are an accidental gift to challenge runners like myself. They provide an incentive to work towards and a reward for a mastery of each individual level. In my experience, having a golden berry accompanying me on my trek through a level replicates the feeling of being in the middle of a deathless run. It makes the stakes and nerves more real and more representative of being in an actual run, compared to just practicing an individual level without the berry. They also provide a great image to show where the player's skill level is at and how ready they may be to take on a full deathless run, rather than attempting each individual level. I've been speedrunning Celeste for the past 8 months, and during that time I've sprinkled in a few deathless attempts, and I really have to say, it's hard. Celeste isn't quite a precision platformer, but at some points it feels close, and when those rooms require some tight movements are when the run gets real interesting, and it's part of the reason why deathless runs can outshine speedruns. For example, in the 6th chapter, Reflection, Madeline, the protagonist of the game, can touch a feather and turn into a golden ball, which allows her to fly freely around the screen until the timer runs out or she dashes out of the ability. Feathering allows for some pretty free-flowing movement, and it can cause some intense close calls as there are tight corners surrounded by spikes that need to be navigated. During a speedrun, this isn't so much of an issue as most of the feather sections are pretty fast. The reflection is so deep into the run that dying here straight up hurts to the core. Not to mention that reaching reflection without dying is such a massive achievement that the nerves really start to rack up about this point. Celeste is a considerably heavy skill-focused game with very little RNG present in the game, and it even ceases to exist at higher skill levels as the cycles that can be considered RNG can actually be gamed to the player's advantage. So is it just as fun to attempt a run that features some degree of RNG? With Celeste, every mistake made is your own fault. There's nothing in the game that could unfairly kill Madeline. Everything within the game that has some degree of randomness is either on a cycle or targets in a very specific way such that it can be manipulated. This isn't a video about beating Celeste without dying. Many people have played other games, as mentioned before, and beaten them without dying or even taken a hit of damage. The frustration that can be felt between games with little to no RNG is completely different to one with a heavy RNG base. Dying as a result of a misinput is a different feeling to dying as a result of a random bone wheel that Tokyo drifted its way down a narrow corridor and stun-locked you to death in Dark Souls, or receiving critical or self-inflicted lethal damage in a Pokemon Nuzlocke run. That's not to say RNG isn't fun. In fact, I think it's the opposite. It keeps the run fresh and exciting. The player has to be constantly vigilant in order to avoid death coming their way from any angle. It requires these challenge runners to think ahead of potential threats coming their way and checking that they are in fact prepared for it. Ultimately, accomplishing such a monumental and difficult goal of trying to beat any single game without dying is what makes it so fun. The constant improvement over time, getting lower and lower death counts day by day, bringing yourself ever closer to that no death run is what makes it fun. For me personally, I have found an extra layer of entertainment and joy with trying these runs by sharing them on the internet and streaming my attempts on Twitch. Getting to share my experience with a group of people just as invested as I am towards achieving my goal, where they celebrate the victories of lowering that personal best and even feeling the pain of losing a run is what makes it so much fun for me. I'm incredibly lucky to have been able to share such a thing with a group of people that want to see me beat the game without dying. The magic of deathless challenge runs is found in the ability to see that just about anyone can achieve it. Sure, there's a barrier of entry for learning the game, but unlike speedrunning, it might not require learning so many new difficult tricks. Speedrunners can always look to faster times, but what makes these no death runs so invigorating is the fact that there is a clear end goal. The failures and the victories of this challenge are so magical to go through. Commiserating to yourself or in front of a community and having that experience of disappointment is a sad experience, but looking to a better run in the future, learning from those mistakes and constantly improving until you finally hit that goal is what makes it all worth it in the end. Oh my god, we f***ing did it! Oh my god! Oh my god!